Hello. Check. A very good morning to all. Thank you for arriving well on time. Please help yourself to some tea or coffee outside. I also request everyone to register themselves at the desk outside the hall if not already done. We will be starting shortly. We're just awaiting some people who are stuck in traffic due to the rain. We will be starting soon. Thank you. Hello, everyone. I request you all to take your seats in the next 5 minutes so we can begin on time. Thank you. A very good morning to our distinguished guests and respected delegates. I am Rohini Dikshit, a research analyst at the Council on Energy, Environment and Water, and I'm delighted to be your MC for the day. I would like to extend a warm welcome to each of you, our esteemed delegates, to our event on the decarbonisation of the automobile sector. As India moves towards net zero emissions, a transition is expected across all economic sectors. For the automobile sector, this would lead to a higher demand for low-carbon vehicles. Indian original equipment manufacturers, or OEMs, are already ramping up low-carbon vehicle manufacturing to tap into the growing demand in the future. However, it is also important to look at emissions during manufacturing and supply chains. Today's event provides a platform for industry leaders, policymakers, and researchers to reflect on these systemic changes and explore strategies for advancing sectoral decarbonization in a competitive and sustainable manner. As a part of today's dialogue, we will formally launch our new report on how India's automobile sector can reach net zero, which will be followed by an exciting panel discussion where experts from the sector will be discussing on how automobile manufacturers are trying to address their scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. With this backdrop, let us delve into the proceedings of the day. I would now like to invite Dr. Vaibhav Chaturvedi, a senior fellow at the Council on Energy, Environment and Water, who leads the Council's work on long-term modeling and carbon markets, for the welcome address.
Great, thank you, Rohini. A very good morning to all, and thank you for braving the traffic and joining us today. We are getting messages from many of our colleagues that they're still stuck in traffic. It's very unpredictable today. So we hope some of them are able to join. But many thanks. We'll start the proceedings for today. For colleagues who don't know me yet, I'm Vaibhav Chaturvedi. I'm an economist by training, and I lead the Council's long-term modeling work and the carbon markets work. And today's discussion is about the manufacturing, auto manufacturing sector. So the auto sector has many moving parts to it, right? And a big debate, as we know, is the debate on-road vehicles, which is a debate on electrification of the fleet, or more hybrid vehicles, or more flex fuel vehicles. So many different kinds of vehicles that we're talking about. That is a debate which is the debate, which is operational debate, so-called operational debate of the transport sector, the moving vehicles. There's the other part of the debate, which is about how do you manufacture these vehicles. So today's discussion that we're going to delve into are more about how do you manufacture those emissions, right? So this is essential because if you look at the transition that could happen on the ground, there are different levers for the transformation or transition. One lever is the policy lever. So all the policy mandates that come, all the incentives that come, all the regulation that is there, that is a way for the policy to drive action or change on ground. So that is, you could say, one part of, very important part of the transition process. The other part is the, you could say, the voluntary actions, which are not necessarily driven by regulation, but is an extremely important component of the whole transition process. And today what we are going to talk about is more of the latter. So it's not really, so policy debate is very important, there are policy implications, but the voluntary part of the debate is also extremely important. So what we wanted to better understand through this exercise was that if the auto sector wants to go even more faster than the regulation, then what does it mean for them? And when I say the auto sector, as I said, it's not about producing more electric vehicles. That is, of course, a separate transition. That is a very important, we continue to understand that. But if the auto OEMs want to decarbonize their own production processes, right? So that is what the debate is about. So if you know the larger corporate sectors have many different kinds of companies. Auto is one of the sectors. It could be steel companies, it could be rubber companies, it could be any different kinds of commodity that is being produced in the economy, right? So each of these corporate sector companies, they are expressing a desire to decarbonize. So many of the companies have already started thinking about their net zero pledges. There's something called the Science-Based Target Initiative. Many of you would have heard about it. So essentially, there is a lot of action happening at the corporate sector level. We are right now, as a first tab, looking at the, you could say, the auto sector. This is our first effort. And then we do intend to move into many other sectors, like maybe the construction sector is another very important sector to think about. But essentially, how is it possible for many of these companies operating in these sectors to go beyond the regulation? To be even more accelerated transition is what we're talking about. So that's what the report that will be released today will be about that. We have been engaging with some of the, you could say, auto sector players, and we want to deepen our engagement as a follow-up of this event today. This is only one event. This is not a full stop. This is just an intermediate step in terms of our deeper engagement with the corporate sector. As an institution, many of you know CW, but I also want to talk about CW. We are a policy research think tank. And within the space, we engage closely with many relevant ministries of the central government, but also many state governments on many different aspects that we work on. And I think Chetna will also give you a snapshot of CW's broader sphere of work as a think tank. And in that process, engaging with the corporate sector and the private sector is extremely important for us. So that's what our effort has been, and many different teams across CW have been engaging with our colleagues in the corporate sector just to first of all simplify that what could be the implications of policy for them, because many times many policies, like let's say the carbon market, is very complicated policies for everybody to understand. That how could it impact their own actions. So one part of the work we do is to, you could say, trying to be that interface between the developments at the policy level and what could be the potential implications of that for our corporate sector colleagues. And the second is also about what could the corporate sector do on its own in terms of its own voluntary actions and to accelerate the transition. So that's the kind of work we are trying to do, and I'm very happy that today we have managed to finish something. Everything takes a lot longer than you expect. So I've been working on this, the modeling kind of work and engaging with this sector for some time. So we thought it is the right time to at least start sharing some learnings, some of the important learnings that have come to us during this process. So that's what this discussion today is all about. And there's also a fantastic panel discussion, a set of panelists that we have got today. I look forward to conversing with all of you during that session. But to begin with, I think we'll have a presentation by Chetna, and then we'll roll on to the day. So welcome again, and thank you again for joining us today. And we look forward to continue this conversation. Thank you.
Hi, good morning everyone. I'm Chetna Arora and I work as a program associate with CW. Thank you all for joining us today at the launch of our report on how can India's automobile manufacturing sector go net zero. The report aims to assess and explore potential pathways for the vehicle manufacturing industry in India to go net zero and the potential implications of such a transition. Today, on behalf of my co-authors, I take this opportunity to present the key findings from our analysis. Before beginning with the content, I would like to take a minute and talk about CW's work. CW is one of Asia's largest policy research institutions aiming to impact sustainable development at scale with data, integrated analysis, and strategic outreach. We are a 370 plus member team now. We work across three main pillars, including transformations, wherein our research on low carbon economy and sustainable industrial sustainability is placed. A lot of our research is also focused on improving the quality of life, wherein we have dedicated teams working on clean air and sustainable mobility. And we have a set of enablers which will help us to achieve those goals, such as sustainable finance, circular economy, and climate resilience. We have engaged with 20 plus Indian states so far, and we aim to impact policy at scale. So to begin with the background of the Indian automobile industry, India is currently the third largest automobile market in the world, and the industry produced almost 28 million vehicles in the last financial year. It contributes to around 7.1% to the Indian GDP and significantly to the manufacturing GDP of the country. This underscores that the sector will play a key role as India charts out its net zero pathways to its net zero emissions. As Vaibhav mentioned, that estimates suggest that a lot of emissions happen during the vehicle use phase, wherein electrifying power train is a critical element. But in order to achieve net zero, it is also important that we look at emissions during the manufacturing processes and the upstream supply chains. So in this analysis, we attempt to focus on the scope 1 and scope 2 emissions from the Indian automobile manufacturing sector. And we also include upstream scope 3 emissions, which is emissions from key suppliers of the auto industry. So in this, we map out different components that are used to manufacture vehicles which the OEMs are maybe outsourcing, and also key materials that go into the vehicle, such as steel and rubber. So the analysis is a modeling-based analysis wherein we use a model called GCAM. GCAM is an integrated assessment model. The model was adapted by our team to represent detailed vehicle manufacturing industry and also to track energy use and emissions of key upstream suppliers. Before beginning the modeling exercise, we did a detailed estimation on the base year energy use and emissions in the automobile value chain. So you use it based on our consultations and data sourced from SIAM, which is the Society of Indian Automobile Manufacturers, and ASI, which is the Annual Survey of Industries. We found that in 2020, a bulk of energy use in the value chain was happening, in fact, from the upstream supplier side. So if you look at it, in 2020, a total of 478 petajoules of energy was used in manufacturing vehicles in India, and approximately 60% of it was used only by material manufacturers. Consequently, the emissions from the sector stood at around 30 million tons, and 83% of these emissions were scope 3 emissions. To also run through briefly on the different categories of emissions that we'll be talking about in the presentation going forward. So scope 1 emissions will generally account emissions from energy use that happen in the direct manufacturing facilities and factories of automobile players, for example, in assembling vehicles, etc. Scope 2 is emissions that happen because OEMs are purchasing electricity and then using it in their factories. Scope 3 basically includes everything from raw material extraction to end-of-life treatment. However, for this analysis, we only consider category 1 of scope 3, which is the use of key purchase goods and services that are further used into manufacturing vehicles. So this figure also helps us visualize the different categories of components that we have considered in the analysis. So we have considered the energy use and emissions that happen in making these parts separately, and then we also track the steel and the rubber demand that happen per vehicle and then arrive at the emissions. Given that steel accounts for approximately 65% of an average vehicle and rubber also makes up 7% of the volume in production of an average car, these two materials were selected because they represent majority of the materials and the energy use happening in the supply chain. So now moving on to some of the future projections that we got from our modeling analysis. First is that annual vehicle production in India is projected to grow 3.7 times between 2020 and 2050. This means that the annual vehicle production will reach approximately 95 million by 2050. And if we look at different vehicle categories, we can see that four-wheeler production increases nearly 9-folds between 2020 and 2050. whereas three-wheeler production and bus production saturates and then declines thereafter. This is because higher incomes in the economy will shift demand away from two-wheelers and public transport to more private-owned mobility in the business-as-usual scenario. Moreover, we also find that due to increased freight mobility demand, the manufacturing of tractors and heavy commercial vehicles will nearly increase threefold in the same period. Now, driven by the increasing vehicle production, the energy use of the sector and the suppliers is set to grow manifold. We see that the automobile OEMs and component manufacturers, their energy use will go significantly till 2050. Interestingly, majority of it is electricity, and direct energy used by automobile companies is significantly less than their component manufacturers. Moving on to the material side, so we see that steel for automobiles nearly consumes around 600 petajoules of energy by 2050, and the steel suppliers would continue to rely on coal in the longer run. Whereas rubber suppliers rely on electricity followed by gas. So if we see the energy use happening in the whole process of making a vehicle, we see that majority use either happen on the component side or the steel supplier side. Where the component side, the energy mix is dominated by electricity use, whereas the steel side, the suppliers still rely on a lot of coal in a business as usual scenario. So this scenario is when there is no specific emission reduction targets for the manufacturing sector in place. Given that the energy use of all these processes and in all these layers go multifold, emissions from vehicle manufacturing will also increase. In fact, they will more than double by 2050, reaching 64 million tons. And interestingly, if we see, more than 70% of these emissions will be scope 3 emissions, which is emissions that are happening due to in manufacturing components and steel and rubber that will be used in vehicles. And followed by 28% of scope 2 emissions, which is emissions because OEMs are purchasing electricity to power their own factories and operations. Interestingly, the direct scope 1 emissions of automobile sector and the companies are negligible if we compare it across the value chain. And we see that though the emissions have are projected to double by 2050 in a BAU scenario, but interestingly, the production also increases by 4 times, which essentially means that emission intensity of production is declining. But we say that in order to reach net zero, even a greater push is required. So how will the emission trajectory pan out in such a scenario if the sector aims for an accelerated net zero, that is by 2050? So if we see that the emissions will peak from the sector will peak in 2030 and then decline thereafter. Interestingly, scope 3 emissions, which is from the component and the steel material suppliers, would see the largest dropping from more than 45 million tons in BAU to approximately 4.5 million tons under net zero, and this represents almost like a 10 times decrease. Also, given that scope 2 and if we see the 9 million ton residual that is there in the net zero scenario, approximately half of it is scope 2 emissions, which highlights the fact that automobile OEMs would have to, a key decision for them would be how they are sourcing their electricity. So how they are sourcing this electricity will be a key point in their decarbonization story. So given that we are saying that the emissions should peak in 2030 and then if the sector aims to achieve net zero scenario by 2050, then what would happen? So we say the implications in terms of energy used by these different stakeholders or the processes in the value chain is that, as discussed earlier, OEMs and component suppliers are still relying on a lot of electricity in their energy mix, and they will continue to do so. However, there will be significant shifts in the material supplier side. So if we talk about steel suppliers, given that was like the highest energy consuming part in the value chain and also highest emitting part. So we see that the share of coal in the steel suppliers energy mix would drop from over 70% to 10%, and then hydrogen will now account for majority share, approximately 56-57%. Interestingly, we also say that the share of steel that is produced through recycling scrap would need to be scaled up to by 48 to 50%. And it is important to note that the findings that we are giving for the steel suppliers is the steel that will be used for vehicles only, and it doesn't give a picture of the total steel industry in India. So this is the steel that is used in vehicles. And if we have any steel suppliers in the room, we'd be happy to hear from them on how are they witnessing the demand patterns shift recently and how they think that it will impact their energy use. So now moving on to the rubber suppliers, we say that almost all of the energy used by rubber suppliers will shift to electricity, and the process will completely electrify. Now, given that there are significant changes and transitions happening in the upstream supply chains, there will be certain cost implications for the auto industry. And we say that due to increased electricity demand under a net zero scenario, because sectors are now electrifying, there is a lot more electricity demand. So electricity prices to the industry would be around 3 to 5% higher between 2040 and 2050. Moreover, we say that the steel suppliers in the economy are also facing this high fuel prices. And also, given that steel is a hard to abate sector, the suppliers would now need to maybe opt for expensive mitigation options basically. So if they opt for those options, the price at which automobile companies procure steel would be higher now, which essentially means increasing raw material costs for the auto companies. We say that the prices at which OEMs are now procuring steel is 33 to 35% higher under this net zero scenario versus the BAU. And given that assuming that the automobile company uses the near net zero carbon steel in their vehicles, we say that the price premium of using such a steel in your vehicles will be around 2 to 5% of the vehicle price, depending on the segment that we are talking about. Given that this increase sounds modest, but also to highlight, then coming to some of the main recommendations that follow from the analysis. So we say that one of the key, given that scope, even under a net zero scenario, there will be a lot of residual scope 2 emissions. So it is very important for auto OEMs to see how are they sourcing electricity. Our estimates suggest that the OEM's electricity demand by 2050 would be approximately 54 terawatt hours. And if we want to supply this by clean electricity, we would need approximately 34 gigawatts of solar only for the auto industry. Then, as we said, there are a lot of emissions happening in the upstream supply chain. So it is very important that the auto companies jointly work with their suppliers to set science-based scope 3 targets, which can also help align the decarbonization in the whole value chain. As we talked a lot about steel. So low carbon steel would be playing a very important role in the sector's transition. As we saw, there are two ways: increasing the share of hydrogen and the share of steel produced through scrap. So we say basically that auto companies could think of sourcing green steel and procuring green steel through advanced market commitments. Basically, under such arrangement, the auto companies will be committing to buying preset volumes of green steel in future at preset prices. So this will help the steel suppliers, and this will give them the incentive to invest in alternative technologies, because now they have a ready market demand and basically a ready market that awaits green steel. So lastly, we say that as supply chains, decarbonization might move a bit more gradually. So for supporting direct emission reduction efforts, automobile companies can invest in high quality offset projects, but this should be complementary to their direct efforts. And under a net zero scenario, we say that sourcing low carbon steel and 100% green electricity will be the two key decarbonization levers for the industry. So in summary, I would like to summarize now. In summary, while a lot of progress has been happening on addressing the tailpipe emissions, it is also important that we look at the emissions happening in the manufacturing and the supply chains. And if the auto industry commits and can help create can help decarbonize their whole value chain, they will not only meet their own net zero goals, but they will also help in creating demand signals that we need for broader industrial decarbonization in the country. I would stop there now. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Chetna. 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 Thank
Thank you, Chetna, for the engaging overview of the report. This report is now live on our website and can be accessed using the QR code placed on all the tables. I now invite Dr. Chaturvedi and Ms. Chetna, the authors, to formally launch the report. Our colleague Pallavi Das is also an author, but unfortunately could not join us in person. She has joined us virtually. I also request our distinguished panelists to join the authors on stage for a photo with the newly launched report. Thank you, Dr. Chaturvedi, Ms. Chetna, and our panelists. Dear guests, we will now break for tea and snacks and resume at 11:40 a.m. for the panel discussion. We also have an interactive data visualization activity for our guests placed just outside the hall. We would like to understand your perspectives on the recommendations of this report and would like you to paste the circles with the recommendations in the area on the graph corresponding to the feasibility. We have our colleagues near the board to explain this activity and gather your inputs. Please enjoy the tea break. We will resume at 11:40 a.m. Thank you. person who will join me. I just mentioned that he joins on. Yes, yes, I'm mentioning that. Yes, yes, it is. I think so. Then Ajiji will know. Welcome back, everyone. I hope you all enjoyed the refreshments and the activity and also had a chance to connect with each other. We will now move on to the next segment of the event, the moderated panel discussion on driving decarbonization in auto manufacturing, tackling Scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions. While Scope 1 emissions from the energy directly used by a firm can be monitored with relative ease, Scope 2 emissions from purchased electricity and Scope 3 emissions from upstream and downstream supply can be far more tricky to measure and reduce. Our discussion will explore first-hand experiences from experts working in and with OEMs who will shed light on the practices and mandates followed in the industry to tackle emissions. I have the honor to invite the speakers for today's panel discussion. First, I welcome Mr. I.V. Rao, Distinguished Fellow at the Transport and Urban Governance Division of TERI, the Energy and Resources Institute, an expert in Indian automotive policy formulation with over 36 years of experience. Mr. Rao has previously worked with Maruti Suzuki and has been a key force in establishing the Society of Automotive Engineers in India, and is also a member of the Expert Advisory Group in the Ministry of Road Transport and Highways for evolving future regulatory norms on emissions and safety. His expertise ranges from alternate technology to decarbonized mobility and their life cycle analysis, to manufacturing engineering functions, technology transfers, and component localization. Sir, I welcome you. I welcome Mr. Ankit Todi, Chief Sustainability Officer, Mahindra Group, who drives sustainability for Mahindra in both domestic industry associations and international forums, such as World Economic Forum and United Nations Global Impact. With experience working with multiple sectors in strategy management consulting, he leads Mahindra's sustainability strategy, including sustainability reporting, disclosures and compliance, as well as green business transition and capability building. A member of Mahindra's Young Leaders cohort, he is passionate about the clean tech ecosystem and works to bring new innovations by engaging with the startup ecosystem. Unfortunately, Mr. Todi could not join us in person. He will be joining us online shortly. I welcome Mr. Thakur Perwani, Chief Sustainability Officer of TVS Motor Company. Mr. Perwani is an SHE and sustainability leader with over 20 years of cross-industry experience in ESG governance and safety and health and environment systems. He has led transformative initiatives with global companies like Cadbury, Unilever, Coca-Cola, Amazon, and Dr. Reddy's. He pioneered the globally recognized My Sustainability Index, My Safety Index, and My Health Index, setting new benchmarks in corporate sustainability. At TVS, he is steering ESG integration into the company's core strategy to align the business's success with the well-being of people and the planet. Sir, I welcome you. I welcome Ms. Arunima Keti, lead at the Center for Clean Mobility at Ola Mobility Institute. An urban planner turned clean mobility advocate, her work focuses on advancing sustainable transportation with a strong emphasis on public sector collaboration and technology integration. She has been actively engaged in supporting the Agency for New and Renewable Energy Research and Technology at the Government of Kerala, where she has contributed to key initiatives including wireless EV charging pilots, vehicle-to-grid integration strategies, and the planning of decentralized EV charging hubs. Ma'am, I welcome you. I now invite Dr. Chaturvedi, Senior Fellow at CW, to moderate the discussion. We will be taking a few audience questions towards the end. Sir, the floor is yours.
Great, a very good afternoon to all, and it's a privilege to be joined by an excellent set of panelists, so thank you all for your time today. The room is a lot fuller now, so very, very happy that we got some break. I believe it is still raining heavily outside, so there's some people still on the way, so it's amazing. The discussion started at 10 and people are still trying to join by 12, so we thank you for all the efforts you have made for joining us today. As I said in the morning, the discussion in the auto sector is like a two-part discussion. One is about the downstream. The heavy debate, the big debate is about downstream, which is about different kinds of vehicle, low carbon vehicles. It could be hybrid, it could be electric vehicles. But it's a debate on the downstream. Today we are talking about the manufacturing part of the value chain. So that's what we are going to focus on today. I'm going to start with Mr. Rao. So you have got long experience and you have observed how the auto sector has evolved for long now. So in the manufacturing part of the process, if you could tell us now what is your view of the large auto sector. I know that you have been you were associated with Maruti before joining Terry. Still, what we want to listen is not just the Maruti specific insight, but the larger auto sector, because that's the experience you bring to the table. So we'll start with your views and then we'll go around the table. Thank you.
Thanks for this opportunity to be part of this panel discussion. Talking about manufacturing in auto sector, actually automobile industry or manufacturers follow most of the sustainability related parameters which are very closely controlled in terms of energy usage, material usage, and the water, etc. So all these are very focused targets, or rather when a new model is being developed, there are clear targets as to what should be the weight reduction with reference to the previous model which it's replacing, and also there's a price target, and then when they are talking about manufacturing processes, there is a lot of discussion about how it is better compared to the previous model in terms of energy for manufacturing. So all these parameters are very, very closely monitored, and they talk in terms of energy consumption per vehicle, water, and also they have very clear target of not zero discharge into the system. So they try to recycle the water after necessary treatment. And resources, of course, weight reduction for each system-wise targets are there, and which actually cumulatively gives how the total new model would be lighter compared to the previous model. To give a very simple example, sorry, I'm taking example from Maruti because I worked there. If you look at the Swifts, which was first generation Swift, which was launched in 2004, and compare with the next two generations of Swift, the first one looked bigger and it was heavier compared to the next second generation and third generation. And though externally the dimensions are less than the first generation Swift, the interior passenger cabin space is more. And also the weight of the whole vehicle is less than the first generation Swift. So it's a very clear targeted design activity which is done to basically conserve or reduce the various materials being used for the vehicle, and also at the same time give better comfort or give more value to the users in terms of increasing the interior space, what is there in the vehicle. Uh, Similarly, in case of energy, energy is also a focused parameter which is controlled, because one, from environmental point of view, reducing energy is basically reducing the CO2 footprint. But from business point of view, it costs money. So any reduction in energy consumption for making a vehicle is indirectly contributing to the bottom line. Basically, it reduces the cost. So also the resources. I mean, the raw material, if you're reducing the usage, mostly it will result in the cost down also. Uh, this is as far as the OEMs are concerned. And when you talk about the suppliers, the OEMs do work along with the suppliers to actually handhold them to basically target continuous improvement in the value proposition to the customer. So whatever systems are in use at the start of model launch are further reviewed and reworked periodically to improve value offering to the customer, which would mean either improvement in the performance or reducing the overall cost or the way it's manufactured, etc. So which results in overall improvement in the offering. The biggest issue and problem is the second tier vendors, who are not directly controlled by the OEM, but it is the tier ones who actually interact with the tier twos when they are buying parts from the tier two suppliers. There things are slightly different, and in spite of a lot of efforts put in by different OEMs, still it's slightly not a very well managed group.
Great, thank you, Mr. Rao. I think some of the points that you mentioned. First, you said that many of these OEMs already making a lot of efforts, have been making a lot of efforts since long now. And you gave examples on not just carbon, but you talked about a lot of other like water conservation efforts. So many different kinds of efforts are already being made by the OEMs. One thing you specifically emphasized was about weight reduction. Weight reduction has already happened. In fact, I would believe that the CAFE standards have also led to some effort on weight reduction on the part of OEMs. And the co-benefit is probably this lower steel means lower carbon emissions, because this climate debate is what we are also focusing on today. So that's like the co-benefit of the weight reduction process. On cost impacts, I think our research does show that even in inflation-adjusted terms, cost could be 2 to 5% higher if you actually go for an accelerated net zero, if OEMs go for. So in fact, the larger debate, economy-wide debate, is that net zero will mean some cost impact on the economy, which you could say the trade-off between climate impacts and mitigation. So as a society, we might need to be okay with bearing that additional cost just to avert the impacts of climate change. But it's a very tricky thing. So I'll come back to that later. First, I want to get the...
I just want to add one more thing. In case of energy, a lot of manufacturers have set up the solar panels for generating green energy. And as far as Maruti is concerned, from day one, they were generating their own power using the PNG, that is piped natural gas. So they rarely use diesel generation sets for their energy requirements. Mostly it is on the natural gas. So that way, I mean, the energy, what now, the Maruti has set up a lot of solar installations to cater for their energy needs.
Great, yeah. So that's one kind of intervention that companies are already making. So which is great. I think those are the things that need to be scaled up. I'll come to Mr. Thakur Pherwani now. Mr. Pherwani at TVS has been in, first of all, the electric vehicle business for some time now, and one of the leaders in that space. But on the manufacturing side, what are the efforts that TVS is making, and what are the big challenges do you see? I think initially we will hear about, let's say, company level challenges, but collectively for the panel, it would be great to hear in the second part of the discussion about what could be done to incentivize or motivate the industry at large, all the different companies, to actually move the manufacturing process also towards like low carbon, including the supply chains, how much leverage they have on the supply chain, those kinds of issues we would like to discuss at the next step. But great to hear what TVS is already doing in this space. Mr. Pherwani.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here, Steve. This is important discussion, and most importantly, uh, the value add as a corporate, which we need to look into first to decide the right strategy, how we need to move forward. And for that, what we have taken into account is making our own abatement curve of carbon, how it looks like after mapping how much carbon footprint at scope 1, 2, and 3 pan out to be, and also deciding our own internal carbon price on scope 1, 2, and we are in the process to finalize scope 3, including that also how ICP will look like, and also then external carbon pricing over a period of time, how it will pan out to be. Also understanding the activities and programs which we have established over a period of time, how much carbon stock we have, so that over a period of time when we say there's something which is residual left out, no need to work around 2040, 2045 in our net zero journey to work around that, because any of those high credit, high quality credit, if we need to obtain, we need to start working now. So that 15 to 20 year time period in which it will mature and it will give us the real value at nature-based solution, carbon credits which we are going to opt for. And also looking at multiple levers when we have a mapping around scope 1, 2, and 3, there are some enablers and there are some challenges within the fence. And then there are some enabler and challenges beyond the fence. So challenges we will talk about within and beyond in your next set of questions which are coming up. But we will talk about the levers which we have taken into account from scope 1, 2, and 3 perspective. And this is into 6 different dimensions. The first dimension is mapping scope 1 and 2 within the fence accurately, efficiently, and how we can automate the process and make sure that assurance happens in real time. So which means creating a data platform, IoT-based solution to ensure that data is flowing into the system seamlessly without any deliberation or margin of errors. Second, once we have this information and data, and when you know what is our delta, what are those specific levers where we need to take into account, starting with lever 1 of carbon efficiency, energy efficiency programs, by taking into account best of the technologies available and where we can work with institution and resources where we can work on this part. 2, ensuring that we hop into some of the activities or group captive projects which is going to give us huge amount of stake in terms of renewable energy. As we speak, TVS Motor have 96% of our energy which we are sourcing is green, and it is coming from wind, solar, and one of our plant which is recently acquired plant in UK, it is 100% green, because that power is getting sourced via 100% green energy, whereas in India it is not possible to reach 100% because of the regulatory challenges. 3, making sure that we enable this understanding among people mind, our employees' mind and heart, and that's how we have started our Sustainability Ambassador program. And there are 16 thematic areas in it. Our objective is to have 1,000 like-minded people working in these 16 different thematic areas, and one of the thematic areas is energy. And we are making sure that those feel that this is my life's calling. We certify them up to the level where they become master trainers, and also at some point in time, certification from me, from energy manager and energy auditors, to use those resources in terms of keep thinking what are the ways and means to work around this. So these are levers on scope 1 and 2, whereas on scope 3, which is the most difficult part, in last couple of years we tried to refine it as much as possible. And biggest challenge around this is estimation of it, because the easiest way to measure scope 3 is spend base. And we have realized if we go with the spend base, we will not be able to realize the actual effort which is going on at our supplier end, because they're also transitioning towards the green energy and alternate material, recycled component into it. Many of those things needs to be taken out properly. So keeping that in mind, this year onwards, we have started reaching out to the suppliers to collect the actual data to measure how the footprint look like. And I'm so happy to share with you that because of this effort, we are able to now get to know that if we go with the estimation effort, which is like spend base, we were estimating 33% more carbon as compared to at actual what is happening on ground. And we've started this activity in line with making sure that each and every product we have to have a LCA-based approach in terms of understanding what is the embodied carbon also into the product, and getting a certification from a third-party agency to get an eco label. or Green Pro certification kind of a label. So 15 days from now, our first bike is going to get that Green Pro label, which is 33% lesser carbon footprint as compared to best-in-class bike in Europe, which means that we have raised the bar, set the standard for ourselves, considering this as a baseline. And that's a power of, at actual calculation, though it was a painstaking, it took us 5 months to collect that data with 85% of it at actual suppliers. We have even reached out to tier 2 and also up to tier 3 in terms of collecting that information. And that's how we realized that it's important to bring entire value chain into the fulcrum and value creation. And we launched My Sustainability Index program and also Sustainability Ambassador program at our supplier level also. Apart from this, it's important that once we are talking about scope 1, scope 2, and also do the carbon stock evaluation. I'm using this word again, carbon stock evaluation, because 20 years back, 40% of our land parcel across our plant, we have converged into a man-made forest. Today, our carbon stock evaluation, which is on surface, soil, and plantation, indicates that we have 80,000 tons of carbon sequestered every year because of this effort, whereas only 20,000 tons is left over to be neutralized to reach at net zero operation at scope 1 and scope 2 level, which means we have additional carbon stock, which we are making sure that for the future in next 30 years, how our projection, the growth which is coming up at the rate of 15%, we are keeping that as a reserve. And the balance, we have decided to go for voluntary market to raise the carbon credit, keep on accumulating, compound it, and keep that for the delta, which is going to come us and hit us in terms of when we will go for low carbon material over a period of time. So that's a strategy which we are taking into account for this, as well as we are growing at a faster pace on our electric mobility solution. And there are 3 different strategies we have taken into account. One, invest into as many as electric mobility solution platforms. And that's how we acquired 5 different companies in Europe in the last 5 years, those who are producing electric bicycles. And very soon you will see TVS electric bicycles coming in India, which we are already selling in Europe. Second, making sure we invest into the R&D for future mobility solution on clean fuel, material, where a lot of R&D is happening in terms of what is the best way in terms of giving right durability, strength, and also the latent need, what customer need. And third area is why only investing into bikes which are plying on road? Why not into the technologies like drone, where everyone would like to beat the traffic and start flying over a period of time? And that's where we've invested into companies like Zapata, which is like flying drones, to create an exciting mobility solution over a period of time. And that also an alternative mobility path towards electric mobility or low carbon mobility solution. Our growth of electric mobility in India is moving steep. It's like last year we've sold 3% of our entire sale volume was electric mobility. By the time we close this financial year, it is 6%. Next year, it would be 12%, which means it's growing very fast. And that's how our entire electric mobility solution we have registered under Vera. In a 6-month time, we are going to get a carbon credit for the electric mobility solution as well. And this will keep on compounding. And whatever credit coming from there also, we are going to sit on it, invest into new technologies, invest into R&D, invest into material cost, which is going to impact the business. And the concern with respect to the carbon, low carbon steel, which is going to be 5% more, or any of the material which will be 5% more, we are going to offset this with our credits, which are converging from downstream from electric mobility, upstream from our carbon stock, so that there is no as such fuss at the CFO level when he is telling, hey, look, this is 10% more, I'm not going to give you fund for it. So we are creating and balancing that thing in an effective manner so that we continue to work in that direction. Whereas we have also started working on product stewardship, the final lever, which is like the most powerful lever, where we are the first company in India who is working on 21 different elements of product stewardship, which is right from alternative material, bio-based material, lightweighting, fuel efficiency, how we can bring in more and more recycled content into the bike, noise, vibration, ergonomics, how to design some of the features which is safe, which is going to keep a rider as well as bike safe for a period of time, auto balancing, detect the mood and movement of the people auto drive, many more features which are coming up in terms of product stewardship, which is part of our dynamics which we are going to bring in to set the expectation right in line with our vision, which is giving exciting mobility solution which is safe, sustainable, and responsible. Apart from this, we are making sure as we speak, 90% of our bike components which we are selling in the market, these are recoverable, 85% of the components are recyclable, and 12% of the component already have recycled content into it, which means our objective is to stretch the line, bend the line, and close the loop. When it comes to stretch the line, there is another investment happened in a startup company called DriveX, where we have 50 centers now, and we are going to have soon 500 centers across India. Buy the bikes from the market, refurbish it, and give it a second life. That's another venture, which is stretching the line. Bending the line, it's about designing for sustainability, so that in future when there is an ecosystem for recycling, our bikes components would be favorable for everyone to take it at a price which we want them to buy. And that's where we are also establishing our own RVSF center to collect all scrap bikes and taking out the material and feeding back to our suppliers. And closing the loop is all about working with suppliers to understand the value of getting this material and bringing back into the bike. So idea and objective is that if you look at in last 10 minutes what I just said, there are multiple levers which are happening parallel at any given point in time. There are 42 plus different projects which we are taking into account towards our net zero journey. But there are still some pain areas, and those are very, very significant. Probably in the next set of questions I would like to highlight where we need support, what needs to be driven at a policy level, at a sustainable finance framework level, how this will come in play.
Well, thank you, Mr. Fairwani. I think this is extremely comprehensive. When I was listening to you, I was just thinking the suite of activities that Mahindra is doing, both on the downstream side, and I've listed so many, and I would like to, it will be great for our team to study and the larger set of people who are here to study and understand many of those. It looks like, fantastic. You're talking about not just tech-driven changes, but also, engaging with people, engaging with your supply chain and finding sustainability leaders in the supply chain itself. And along with the whole carbon stock and carbon abatement mapping that you talked about at your company level. So it does appear as an extremely comprehensive set of interventions that TVS is already unveiling, and there's a lot to learn for many companies in the ecosystem from all this, the comprehensiveness of the effort itself. So it's great for us to hear that, and we'll come back to the challenges. And also one specific thing you mentioned, carbon price. It will be great to hear how you are dealing with that uncertain variable, because that's a big uncertain variable. But I think the strategy that you talked about, that if you have carbon stock and you can offset, you can sell the credits later, not from just the stock, but also the electric vehicles that from where you're getting credit from Vera. And if you are able to offset the future cost of higher manufacturing processes, a very interesting strategy, and that looks a long time in the future. So thank you for sharing all that. We'll come to the challenges later. So Ankit has informed me that he has been called for the board meeting. So he will join us for 15-20 minutes whenever he suddenly gets time from that important internal meeting. So we, of course, the link is live. Whenever he joins, then we'll come to him. So Arunama, I'll come to you. As a lead of clean mobility at Ola Mobility Institute, there's a lot for you to handle. But I know you're working closely with the governments on the, first of all, public transportation. That is one part of the debate. So you could talk also about manufacturing public transportation like buses and those kinds of things. But also shared platform. What is your view on the shared platform itself, like shared mobility, and how is there a way that the Olas and Ubers can actually drive, change from the manufacturer side? Because you won't, I'm just wondering, would you have any leverage on that side? Can you, what can you do to change that part of the ecosystem? Because you've already changed a lot in the way the behavior on ground happens. That is clearly changed. But what on the other part of the ecosystem can the Olas and Ubers actually do? So over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Vaibhav. At OMI, through our studies on EVs or larger mobility ecosystem, we often highlight how digital platforms can serve as a critical lever in grieving EV value chain. Like you rightly mentioned, platforms like Ola or Uber, they manage big fleets. they have the power to buy or onboard EVs in bulk. This also gives them power to choose greener choices. This goes the same for e-commerce or quick commerce platforms like Zomato, Swiggy, Amazon, Flipkart, etc. Also, with the new aggregator policy in Delhi, which requires gradual but definite EV adoption in these platforms, aggregators are in a stronger position to demand EVs. Also, we believe that these digital platforms have a big role to play in circularity. They keep tracking how these vehicles or batteries are used. So they can set up a system for battery take-back system. They can set up the battery take-back system. Through this system, they can spot batteries which can be used for second life application. They can support refurbishment or resale of batteries. They can also partner with recyclers and end the loop. They can use the end-of-life batteries and produce valuable resources. So definitely, yes, I believe digital platforms or digital mobility platforms can touch all the sectors of EV value chain and drive greener production and smarter reuse of batteries.
Great, great. Thank you, Arnama. And would you like to talk a bit about public transportation? Because that's a very different ecosystem altogether. And in the bus manufacturing space, you still talked about you could say the downstream part of the debate, but how they can be a demand source for more electric vehicles, battery recycling. But in terms of the manufacturing ecosystem, is there a way, Ola has its own manufacturing ecosystem, right? So in terms of manufacturing its own vehicles and talking about its own supply chain, what kind of efforts is it thinking? It's a very new entrant. Just to also say this is a very new to this larger manufacturing ecosystem. But is it already thinking about these things? What is it thinking about? If you could also share some information.
Yes, not just buses, but all EVs, we have policies to use recycled components into supply chain again. And Ola and in other platforms are also using these venue to use all these recycled components. I'm sure other panelists can answer better than me. They are more knowledgeable in terms of that because I'm in the policy side. So I'm sure they can answer better this question.
Great, thank you. So I think recycling is emerging as a very important theme. And I know one colleague from Mahindra is also there, I think, who has joined us today. So we'll come to you for your insights on the recycling business part of it. How do you see it evolving and what is the uptake? And what are the big challenges you see, so that is one thing. But Mr. Rao, on the recycling part of the businesses, what perspectives would you have? Yeah.
Actually, recycling is very important from point of view of resource conservation. I was actually involved in when Maruti was setting up its recycling center in Noida. Right now, they are still struggling to get the vehicles for dismantling. The end of vehicle, the policy which is there, actually doesn't compel a user to surrender their vehicle for scrappage because there are no clear-cut incentives or any support that he gets for buying a new vehicle after surrendering the end-of-life vehicle. So as a result, a lot of people are still continue to keep the vehicle with them for whatever reasons. And as a result, the input for the end of ELV recyclers is very less. Like the plant which Maruti has in Noida has a capability to dismantle about 25,000 vehicles per year, but they are not getting even 2,000 vehicles per month. So that's one gap. Second problem, what I foresee is to get the best value out of recycling, what is happening, the level to which the material gets segregated is very, very important. So there also, I think there is a concern in terms of clubbing all steel together or all rubber together or plastics together is not the best way of recycling because everything, when you're clubbing all this steel together, then it has to go for melting only. Whereas if you are able to identify a specific grade of steel, then it can be earmarked for specific component making. Like, again, going back to Maruti has a press shop where they are making their own body panels, and about 40% of the input material comes out as a scrap, which is not usable by the Maruti. So they identify these blanks, what comes out of the shop, and they identify components which can be made out of the stock, which means the value we are getting out of that scrap is very high because it's basically replacing the virgin steel. So I think there should be some effort at the recyclers also to segregate various material to the based on specifications which they should be able to get from the OEMs. So that would increase the value of the recycled outputs what we are getting. The biggest problem what we are facing right now in terms of increasing the vehicle input, ELV vehicle input to the recyclers is a clear guideline either from the OEMs or from the government as to how they are going to support the user if he surrenders his vehicle, how he can get a new vehicle. So that's one of the major issues which is actually decelerating the process.
Great. So I think that's a very important point. If the factory capacity is 25,000 vehicles and it is getting only 2,000, I'm sure any other investor who wants to invest into this recycling business, it's not a very motivating.
And also the so-called ELV recycling, scrappage and recycling is a very thin margin business. And because of typical Indian mentality, we expect a lot of money when we are parting with a vehicle or any item which is not useful for us. So we expect maximum money even for those things. As a result, the sale value of the end-of-life vehicle when a recycler buys is quite high compared to international numbers. And also, it also depends upon the size of the vehicle and what is the condition of the vehicle. So actually, condition of the vehicle doesn't really get any more revenue to the recycler. So, these have to settle where there has to be some guideline from the government or, guideline to basically identify what should be the resale value of a used, end-of-life vehicle based on the material content of the vehicle. Because what a recycler gets is only the value of the raw materials, basically. It's not based on Toyota vehicle or Mercedes, but all are same when it comes to recycling.
Yes, so the scrap has no brand basically. Scrap is scrap. Yeah, so but that's a very important part of the story, and in fact to get to net zero, we know that we'll have to increasingly use more and more scrap. But just a quick question to you, Thakur, where does TVS source its scrap from? Or do you recycle? Do you have an in-house unit? Or do you have supply chains? Or you're building something from just scrap and recycling perspective?
So when it comes to usage of such type of scrap in our recycled content, there are three ways by which we approach. One, our own R&D center, which is generating more than 500 to 700 bikes every month, coming out of test rigs or various sections, go for recycling, right, to the aggregators, those who are finally dismantling it and using it. Second is RVSF facilities. The required type and quality of material getting sourced from there. And third is the conventional source, which is like many of the big vendors or the rec pickers, those who aggregate and bring it. And there's one more model which I have recently seen and started by one of the startup company called TrashCon, which is Prime Minister awardee startup. They have their own patented trash boat, which they've established in Bangalore, and they are reaching out to corporates to use the CSR fund to establish such type of trash board in key cities. which is going to segregate the material, and especially plastic. So their plastic boards, which are recycled plastic boards, are sturdy, better as compared to any other plastic material, which we get it from any of the vendor. And we have started using that in our 3-wheeler passenger seat to replace virgin wood in place of this specific plastic, which is already we have seen 70,000 kilometers of a life in R&D testing. It's going good, which means that we would need almost 15,000 tons of this specific set of plastic as a consistent supply for producing it for a long term for India as well as international market. And if that has to happen, reliable and consistent source of material supply is important. And that's how OEM need to take a charge to promote such type of initiative to establish this closer to wherever our suppliers are in that vicinity, so that the logistic costs come down. I'll tell you, there's an anecdote, or the story. 2 years back when I've joined the organization, when I was talking to one of my plastic component supplier, and I asked, why can't you use 60 or 70% of the recycled plastic into the components? He said that, gentlemen, technology is available, R&D has been done, we can do it at a scale and speed, subject to the material is available at my doorstep. I'm not going to go and negotiate with 50 other kabadi walas, otherwise my cost will go up, my logistic cost and everything will go up. Are you ready to bear that cost? So either we bear the cost, or we bring that material to their doorstep at no cost, so that they are happily using this material and enhancing the recycled material content. So that's something which is important for us to create as an ecosystem in and around our supplier. So that's where we started working in 3 dimensions when we have to work towards material. 1, Indianize anything and everything, be vocal for local. 21 to 24 was a phase in which we bought anything and everything what we was purchasing from China or any other country back to India. And we placed them in and around 500 kilometer of our radius of our plant. So that was the first lever which we pulled in to make sure that that logistic cost which was coming from different country, we cut it down and enhance more, give more pie to our local supplier which are under our control, under our nose. Second lever, which is 24 to 27 we are into, is consolidation. So once you already bought them to India and they are fragmented, spread across everywhere, someone is getting 1 crore business, someone is getting 15 crore, someone is getting 50 crore. Now the person who is getting 1 crore business, they say, go fly or kite, I'm not doing anything on sustainability. I'm just earning 1 crore, why should I get into this? And that's where we are consolidating under one single big vendor or a supplier who can churn the larger pie, and also they understand it's a long-term business I'm going to get, and that's how they will sign up for sustainability initiative. And then there is a third lever. Once we do the baselining, those whomsoever will board the bus, bring them under sustainable finance framework so that they accelerate the pace. Even if they say, okay, there is an additional cost to source the material, they feel motivated because they are going to get a fund. Now I'll give you the use case. Any of the supplier, the biggest challenge for any supplier today is capital. Since they are associated with the OEM have a larger leverage to say 60-day payment cycle, 90-day payment cycle. And if I'm holding that payment for 60, 90 days, their motivation is killed. And they are not going to work around best of the quality, quantity, or sustainability. Sustainable finance framework, there are tools and methods by which a finance provider on our equity or our rating will give that funding or funding in terms of capital to the supplier on the next day within 24 hours, the day when the GRN is cut. And if imagine any of the supplier get their capital within 24 hours, it's the biggest win for them. It's the biggest motivation for them. Otherwise, for 90 days, their capital is locked and they are going into the market, raising the fund at 15% capital to continue to run the business. Now that 15% is saved, and in turn, as OEM, we will stick to our norms and we'll give the payment to the bank after 60 days. So that's the power of sustainable finance framework. If that lever come in play, then we can accelerate the path of circularity, bringing in more material, better R&D avenues for our suppliers to accelerate that pace. And I see this is just 3 years down the line. Many more OEMs will opt for such type of strategies. We are stepping into it, and we will make sure that we own our tier 1 and tier 2 supplier in this gambit and make a difference.
This is great to hear. In fact, what I hear from you is it's not just about technical intervention, but it's the business model that's extremely important to make change happen. And that OEMs, given that they're you could say, big and powerful in the space, they have the leverage to actually make this kind of, incentivize this kind of change. And it could be just by changing the capital moving cycles. The example that you've given is a very practical example of how OEMs can actually make change happen, incentivize their suppliers to, move in the direction, you could say sustainability direction and all. That's very interesting. So Arunama, from your perspective, is OMI also looking at this recycling debate in this auto sector? Yeah.
Yes. So in the recycling part, or what we call as urban mining, we are looking at recovering critical minerals like lithium ion, nickel, and all from used batteries. India's Battery Waste Management Rules 2022 mandates that OEM is responsible for collecting and recycling batteries, and they should also use recycled product back in the supply chain, starting from 5% in 2027, and it goes up to 20% in 2030. But we have the mandate in place, we have the policy levers in place, but to push this, we need regional recycle hubs or facilities that would reduce transportation emission and keep the momentum going. We also need other levers, like we can bring in carbon system or green certification for companies which often use recycled products in their supply chain. We can also use battery passport. Battery passport is basically a digital enabler which tells us the health of batteries. Through this facility, we can actually look at what we can do with used batteries, whether we can use it for second life application, or we should refurbish them and reuse that, or we should go for recycling. Another thing is India need to set targets for collection and recycling batteries. So with these things in place, I definitely think we can have more recycling then and have a better use of end-of-life batteries.
Great. So basically, a better understanding of even the health characteristics of a battery that help us to understand whether you kind of reuse it or end up recycling it. That's a very important part. And rare earth is a big debate, as you said. And if we are able to recycle and process also rare earth, it's a highly valuable also, I think. And they are also energy security constraint or other concern for economy at large. So I think that is another big debate that is happening on rare earth. Mr. Rao, you want to say something?
There is a new development now about the batteries. Now they are, when a used battery is being deployed for reuse for some other application, they are also looking at reconditioning the battery by identifying the specific cells which are not in good condition and replacing them with the new cell, so that the battery capacity and life increases, and then they are reusing the batteries.
So very interesting.
But there are still a lot of regulatory requirements are to be identified for this, because if somebody is reworking with the battery, replacing the cell, then it has to go through some checks and balances. So that methodology is being worked out still.
Yeah. So basically you are saying that tech is also advancing, which will help us in achieving because we do want to recycle, but of course you need to have a lot of technical information.
Before recycle, you are basically increasing the life of the
Yes. So that's the first part, to stretch the life itself. If tech is allowing us to do it, and new sort of technologies are evolving for helping us to do that. So that's a good development that is happening.
Something I can add is second life applications. Recently India got its first solar powered EV charging station with second life batteries in Bangalore, which is done by BESCOM and GIZ together. So we can look for such a pilot.
Second life for the same batteries. Yes. Yeah, great. Yeah. So now, we would love to open the floor for any questions, but we know our colleague from Mahindra's recycling business is also there. So if you would like to say something about you are in the thick of that business, and yeah, it will be great to hear from you if you have some perspectives on its demand. Yeah, can somebody give a mic here? Yeah. Yeah, it's on the back. It's on your right. Yeah.
Hi. So just let me introduce myself first. So my name is Chinmay Mishra and I'm part of Mahindra Cero, which is a vehicle recycling company. specifically our RVSF company, which Mr. Fairwani has already mentioned about them. And when you asked initially about the recycling side, Mr. Rao and Mr. Fairwani have already covered most of the basic challenges and opportunities that we as an industry face. But at the same time, there are two things specifically that any recycler would like to see. One is a larger push from the regulatory side to keep to the timelines, to push for legally compliant recyclers to actually get the things done. And the second major challenge would be to, that when we are looking at OEMs, they also choose legally compliant, environmentally sustainable companies to work with when it comes to recycling materials and sourcing recycling materials, which a lot of OEMs are doing. But a larger collaboration is what would be more beneficial. It will actually incentivize all recycling companies to keep working on it, because as Mr. Rao already mentioned, right, it's a very low margin business. So it's only through scale that we can think of pushing ourselves and looking at better quality materials that are coming out of the whole process that we are building.
Thank you. So, Mr. Rao, you also mentioned about this better interface between OEMs and the recyclers. That has been just also talked about. What does it actually mean in practice? What do we mean by better interface? And if Mr. Fairwan, you can also talk about what do we mean by better? Because you are already doing a lot of stuff. So is this what we mean by better interface? Yeah, please.
When ELV recyclers dismantle the vehicle, some support from the OEMs would help them to segregate them properly, to identify various categories of raw material which can be directly used for that particular specification materials. Otherwise, generally, everything would be mixed, and it will not give us the best value. So, for that, the recyclers would need OEM support to get the details of various parts and what are the basic materials used, etc., so that they can properly segregate the materials.
Sure. But is there anything stopping us from doing? Because this appears for me to like a fairly straightforward thing. Is there anything stopping us?
There are a lot of reservations on OEM sides to share these details generally.
Okay, that's very interesting. Yeah, Thakur, please go ahead.
See, in my purview, the transparent disclosure on bike itself, like a QR code where anyone can see how the life cycle, content, material, dismantling methods, or how to recover these things, and design elements with respect to more and more recoverability should be taken into account so that it can be recycled. So it is like design for sustainability, which I've seen getting traction since last 5-7 years. OEMs are working around it. Some of them working since last 1 decade. I see Maruti was working on it since I heard about it 10 years or 11 years back. I was in Gurgaon. So, but right now RVSF is handling those vehicles. Those were like 20-year-old, 25-year-old, right? Very difficult to recover material or not able to segregate in a right manner. It's not even a quality material which is going to get some value or someone will accept it. Most of the time there will be rejection around it. So ultimately the challenges are like for next 5 years RVSF will have a hard time. They have already seen this in last 2 years, another 5 years, but we have to latch on to it. Because as this will phase out and 2015 onwards bikes will go for recycling, then it will shape up in a better manner. But ultimately, till that time, government should incentivize this. And they should encourage all RVCF based on their effort and the energy which is going into it. Like in a classic example of battery passport we were talking about, but we have to see battery from a different angle altogether, out of the box. We are just right now into vicious loop. We at TVS Motors see it in following manner. Our work is happening with respect to battery passport with the digital, how we can display that on our batteries has a QR code where you can see from where it is coming, what is the carbon footprint, how the dismantling will look like, what are the components, where it can go, who are those vendors, everything, every detail in it. Second, working with policymaker on one unified battery swapping system. Imagine there are 5 OEM, 5 different type of shape and size of the battery. If government says that no matter how your bike look like from outside, battery should be same. So that when you have a battery swapping system across country, no matter which bike you are riding or driving, there is a station, you just swap in, swipe out. It is faster than you're fueling the bike right now, right? If that happens, there will be a uniform standardization with respect to quality, quantity, everything, which is not happening, and it should be mandated.
If I recollect properly, when the EV policy was announced, there were a lot of efforts from the government sides to bring together all the manufacturers to decide a standard size and shape for the battery, which OEMs didn't agree.
Yeah,
they said it would restrict their innovation and coming out with.
So I'll come to that also, sir. I mean, this is
just
that was the initiation.
I mean, Professor Junjunwala had a lot of meetings with all the manufacturers, especially two-wheeler and three-wheeler manufacturers.
Yeah, the best panel discussions are where we do have these disagreements. So it's great that we have some.
Let's agree to disagree on many of things, or disagree to disagree.
No,
on
I am talking
most
about the past. Maybe things would have changed now. That's
no, it is
a possibility.
I totally agree with you that what has happened in past, what I'm talking about, what has to happen in the future. If we have to work around the mountains of batteries which are going to hit us in 5 years down the line, end of the life, we will not be able to handle it appropriately. Look at right now what are the 3 key anxieties of a person. 1, I can't ride it beyond 100 kilometers because I have to go back home and charge it. 2, even if I charge and use the public infrastructure, today the costing is 21 rupees per kilowatt hour, whereas at home it is 10 kilowatt hour. 3, I need this fast and quick, and for that, if it has to happen, we need more swapping stations so that it will diffuse the charging anxiety. But if it is limited, that I have to go only at a TVS charging station, oh, it is 10 kilometers away, then it is not going to cut ice. We have to have charging station in every 1-2 kilometer like a petrol pump, where you go, swap in, swap out. And if it is standardized, then nothing like this. OEMs need to realize it. We have started feeling that standardization is the key. In future, if it is getting mandated, like there are many more unwanted things coming as a mandate. We never ask for, if you look at plastic, battery, oil, everything is coming up as EPR. But still is a mandate, right? Government is mandating and we are following. So why not also on the side when we know now the battery system is also getting matured? So that is third thing. Fourth is public charging infrastructure. How to make it viable and should be subsidized. People should be encouraged to establish it. Next is Indianize everything with respect to semiconductor cells, which is right now still costly. It's not viable. Next is sustainable finance towards the people, those who are going to work around the entire ecosystem of the battery. Final is making sure get away from lithium ion. Look at the sodium state batteries. Look at the sand batteries. Look at the alternative methods. Why we are stuck still on the minerals, critical minerals. And then final thing, recycling ecosystem. How much can be recycled, how much value it is going to generate. There are already 8 of the recyclers available for battery in India, and they are doing well. Many of them have a very systematic and robust approach to also take care of the social aspect also in mind. That entire value creation, the social dimension, SA8000 is taken into. And Loham kind of like I would like to name it, battery recyclers who are taking out each and every component or critical mineral and giving it back to whomsoever want in what manner. But they are not able to fetch the right value because end of the day, cell manufacturers are not sitting in India. They are sitting outside somewhere. And they are not ready to bear the cost of this material getting transacted. So for a time being, till the time it becomes a ton, 2 tons or 10 tons, it is not viable and you are just storing at your space which is going to consume a cost and effort and time. So these are 7-8 different dimensions. All of these will go away if we go to the alternative battery like sodium state or any other material which is coming in, which will diffuse lot many anxiety element over a period of time.
But till that happens, you're saying economies of scale are extremely important. And a way to standardizing battery characteristics is a way to achieve economies of scale and then actually get the industry moving. Now, I have another one question on carbon pricing. That's another big debate happening. But before I come to that, there's also a question from online. It's also being streamed live. There's a question that has come in from there. So the question is that we are talking about not the downstream, but the manufacturing. Like, how do we reduce emission from manufacturing? And it's a very interesting comment that one way to reduce emission is also to start producing less vehicles, which is interesting, right? So, of course, manufacturers will never like that. But the question is, it's not about degrowth. It's about the whole debate about less travel, thinking about mobility as a service. So you have a higher capacity utilization of lesser number of cars. So you are still providing the same mobility service, but producing less vehicles through that. So the question is, how would manufacturers feel about this? Because it will also is one of the levers of reducing it, but it also leads to some kind of hit on the vehicle production numbers and all that. So please go ahead.
Look at the demographic of India. We are not like in any European country. Each of our big city like Bangalore equivalent to one country, where there is a matured transportation system. They have evolved and they've realized that mass mobility solution is the best mobility solution, and that's how they're discouraging, increasing taxes so that people give up their two-wheeler, four-wheeler and opt for public commute and everything. Whereas in India, if you look at, even at the bigger cities, it's keep on bigger and bigger and expanding. So government has not given those mass commute systems so far to the public. Otherwise, public would love to travel in metros if it is decongested or alternative method, ways and means. The rate at which we are growing on population or expanding at the geography level, we do not have this public commute system available reaching from point A to point B without any effort. Classic example is if you look at Singapore, you don't need a car. Even if you need a car or if you want a car, it will be hugely taxed. Whereas their tube system within the city is so convenient that you can move around and reach from point A to point B wherever you want to be. So understand that until unless the ecosystem around us is viable for us for commute, which is ease of commuting from point A to point B, we will never be able to reduce two-wheeler, four-wheeler. It will continue to grow. Second, the typical Indian mindset is that we love to get graduated, right? 10 to 12, 12 to college, college to post-graduation. We love to graduate from cycles to two-wheeler, two-wheeler, to four-wheeler, four-wheeler, to bigger four-wheeler, and we love to keep on accumulating it. Even if you have a car, your bike will be there in the corner, because you never know on Sunday you will go and commute for a lesser timing to keep that bike alive. So having that consumption pattern as an individual, that I should be thinking minimalistic, use only what I can chew, or I should how I should contribute. So there are multiple factors which are coming in play. One is that viability is not there, a commute system is not there. Second, I have a mindset that now I am also growing, I am earning more, so I will have more, right? And that also need to be captured over a period of time. So for next 50 years, forget about reducing the number of vehicle. By design, the ecosystem is going to push organization to make this available for the people for their need to ensure they are commuting safely, conveniently, and efficiently.
So thank you for that. I think the question was not that vehicles will reduce from current numbers. It's like if vehicles have to increase by 5 times, instead of 5 times, they increase only by 4 times. So it is still a big increase, but it's kind of you are shaving 10% of the demand, which means maybe 10% less. So as you said, in the decarbonization part, there are many abatement options. Each abatement option is not about 100%. Each abatement option will shave 5%, 10% maybe. So this is one of the abatement options. But this is a very tricky one, because it also talks about not growing not by 5 times, but growing only by 4 times. So I think that is what the question was about. But you made a very interesting point, and Arunoma, I want to come to you on this one. So my question is that the point that Thakur made was that the systems are not in place, right? Which is a reality. But systems can only be in place if the government has enough fiscal space. So to create a fantastic public transportation ecosystem, which as an institution CW has been pushing for so long, and we have been also working in some municipalities to ensure how do you make it viable and all. But the big constraint we face is clearly lack of fiscal space with these governments. So I mean, even procurement of buses is so tough given the demand. So that is a real fiscal challenge, and that's where the private sector can come in, because the hope and expectation is they would end up getting a lot of money with the business models are there. So, and Ola and Ubers are doing in some way already that. So you are essentially, you're not compromising on mobility demand, but you end up sharing vehicles. So you could say people are not buying cars, which is exactly what the question is about, you know. So if people are buying less cars because same service is being provided by lesser number of vehicles now. So what is the role of private sector do you see in public transportation provision? That's a very tricky question. Sorry, it's public transportation by the name it, but let me say buses and all that. Can we really think about scaling the way Olas and Ubers have scaled up in this private mobility space, so to speak? Can we do something similar for, let's say, buses?
I'll take examples from Kerala. In Kerala right now, I would be proudly to say that the EV, KSRTC, e-buses are really running in profit. People are using it. Even though we say that public transportation have not grown enough, that people are still depending on private vehicles. But we are looking at options like carpooling. Like one project that Anert is taking up right now is government fleet for carpooling. They are trying to pool in government vehicles for transportation purpose. Similarly, shared transportation that Ola or Uber is doing. We are also pushing for shared transportation, bike taxis. We have new rules coming in picture, which push for bike taxis also. So similar efforts can be taken up to push private vehicles for more usage. Carpooling is definitely one, and other shared options. We should have state governments support private carpooling mechanisms so that we can reduce vehicle on road.
Great. One thing that jumped from me when you were saying is the moment I say public transportation, the image that comes to my mind is of a bus or a train. It could be local or a metro, whatever. That's the image. But I mean, you are right. Even the private bike taxis, probably that is also public it's a you could say the way we frame public, the way we ourselves visualize public transportation, maybe needs to evolve. You know, we need to move from that thinking that bus is the only public transportation. Maybe people don't want. Maybe the systems that we need to create for great buses and metros will be very challenging to create. But if you could have a lot more shared mobility, which could be bike or it could be Olas and Ubers, or maybe government systems that provide something similar, which are a lot more effective as a customer for me and you, then maybe it's an alternative paradigm, so to speak, which will be complementary to the buses and metro debate. It's not an alternative probably, but it will be complementary to that debate. But that's a role of the private ecosystem. It's a very important role to play in this larger debate. Any quick questions from the audience? Yes, I see one hand there and one hand there. Could someone share the mic, please? There and then, yeah.
Hi.
Please introduce yourself.
My name is Jatin. I'm working with a British bank called NatWest. Basically looking at FX and rate risk, but we've also started a climate risk module where we shock real estate loans to, let's say, very susceptible areas in Miami or Philippines. That's my background. I think the topic that and the report, I mean, it's fantastic and great work that I didn't know, these kind of things are going on in our country. As a consumer, I hope this vision of net zero for the automobile sector translates into something that's more consumable by the consumers. Right now, I can't afford to buy an EV, honestly. And of course, for the businesses, the bottom line is, net profit. But if that doesn't translate into more consumer demand because of less affordability, then what's the point? So I'm sure, like, you have some kind of end goal wherein, you have consumers in mind so that they are incentivized to use more of these products and then, of course, enhance your profitability. I don't know if that's a separate discussion, but then that's my question, yeah.
Sure. So your question is about e-mobility. E-mobility. It is unaffordable as of now. How do we make it affordable?
That's right. Yeah.
Sure. I think a quick response will be okay, because you could say the agenda of the discussion is the manufacturing part, but happy to, I think, if there's another quick response. Yeah.
So as an OEM, we take two things in mind when we are designing any bike. One is a basic need, second is a latent need. The basic need is your commute from point A to point B. Latent need is that I want bike which is fuel efficient, I want bike which is safe, I want bike which is cheaper, and at the same time giving me great connected feature where it is showing me navigation, Bluetooth connectivity, XYZ, all of these things. So that's a value add which we give it to them. In turn, as the business grow, we understand what consumer demand is, and if we have to continue to be have a competitive advantage, we need to continue to bring these specific features. Like, give you an example. I'm sure you all have ridden your bike at some point in time. Earlier, bike used to be like, if you don't remove your side stand and take a corner turn, it used to get wobble because your side stand is not removed. So we understand that in our consumer research, and we realize if we have to give exciting mobility solution, we have to be first designing bike which is safe. And that's how every bike which is now in the market, there is an interlock. If you don't remove the side stand, bike will not start. So these are small features. Another features like self-balancing bike. If you don't know and if you are the early rider, there is a possibility that you will fall down. But gyroscope will not allow your bike to fall. Imagine 1 year down the line when you are there somewhere in Hessel, you don't know where your bike is parked. You just click on an app and bike will come in front of you, self-drive, right? So all of these are the value-added features which we are now looking into. And over a period of time, I'll give you some crazy feature you will not even think of, that you are drunk and you are riding. And bike get to know that you are drunk and it will take you safely to the destination. 180,000 people are dying on the road because of road accident. 75,000 of them are bikers. If we have 20% market share in it, we take the accountability of those 20% fatalities on road. So it's our absolute important responsibility and accountability to give best of the features, which is not only exciting but also safe. And that's the value at which we give it back to the customers.
Great, thank you. So it's like something like a self-driving bike kind of thing. Very interesting. Point.
There is a startup who has developed self-balancing two-wheeler. They are about to start sale of the vehicle very soon.
Great. So a lot of new kinds of developments happening in this space. The other question, please.
Yeah. Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Suchitra Subramanian from Nangi Anderson. It's a consulting firm. My question is mainly to Ms. Arunima, and that's specifically on the battery recycling perspectives and how that can, in the long run, contribute to making the automobile manufacturing sector go net zero. So recently, few months ago, there was this news that now going forward, black mass exports to places like Japan will be banned. And this is quite a big thing because since many years we were exporting to South Korea, Japan and such countries. And for people who are not aware, black mass is basically the pool of spent batteries at the end of their life. So how would this decision impact the sector, and how soon do you think the impact will happen? And lastly, how will this affect the sector if we start moving away towards sodium batteries and other technologies which are not still existing?
Okay, so I'll start with sodium batteries. Like Sir here correctly mentioned, we have to move from lithium and prefer sodium. It's in a way reducing the end-of-life battery usage of lithium ions. But the question you asked, we are focusing on recycling end-of-life batteries. We are trying to take in all the critical minerals from this and put it back to the value chain. And when I say critical minerals, India is also looking at how we can be self-reliable and have our own minerals in place and make our own batteries. So we don't have to export it to other countries. We can use it in our own value chain. We can bring it to the new batteries. So this will take time. Right now, like we said, the rules also say we just have to use 5% of recycled products in new batteries by 2027. But gradually it will grow. By 2030, we are planning to use 20% of recycled products in batteries. So it will take time, but definitely we don't have to worry about exporting. We can use it in our own, our own new batteries that we make in India.
The basic idea of recycling was to get back the raw materials required for cell making. If you are going to export black mass, then you are exporting black mass at a lower price and you are going to import raw materials at a higher price, which is not good for us. So ultimately, the basic EV policy was based on totally recycling the used batteries and reclaim the raw material so that at some point of time there will be a decline of import of raw materials required for batteries, cells and then the batteries.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Rao. Now we are close to the closing time for this discussion, but one question I had was about this whole big debate about carbon pricing, and especially carbon pricing. How is it potentially going to impact the manufacturing ecosystem? The debate is not just about the auto sector; it's a larger, wider debate. But as we know, India's first the version of the carbon market includes it is all about the industrial sector. And of course, the manufacturing auto sector at this stage is not there, but you never know in the future it could come directly, indirectly, whichever way. So this variable, which is very uncertain, how carbon price will pan out, and we're not talking about an internal carbon price, which is voluntary and company determined. We're talking about an external price, which is uncertain and determined by the larger regulation, so to speak, and the demand and supply interface. So any thoughts on our companies from the trying to explore the potential impact of this future carbon price on their manufacturing setups? Is that conversation happening, or are we saying that conversation is very far from now? Any quick responses?
So this is carbon price or carbon tax is at a premature stage. Yesterday evening I was in Chennai, and EDF has arranged a closed door meeting with CSOs to discuss about the impact of carbon price. There were some legal champions were also there, and they were questioning the recent regulation around the carbon. And there are so many things which still is going to shape up over a period of next 2 years' time. And by the time the first 9 industries are going to get the first impact in terms of how the mandate will come, what will be the tax which they need to pay, how the differentiation will look like. On the other end, if we are exporting the material to Europe, there is a CBAM which is coming in play. All of these things, it's like a khichdi right now. It's an absolute bowl which is, no one is able to understand how things are getting, shape up. But this is important that we need to understand at one point in time, it will come in play. This is the right and perfect timing. For me, if you ask me, what is the role of a chief sustainability officer is to understand this type of things and de-risk the business and give them pulse, especially to the CFO, what is going to hit you and how it is going to hit you. Now I'll tell you how my conversation shape up with my CFO apparently, and what is going on right now. And the biggest challenge we didn't discuss in this entire thing, and you need to understand and should bake into your next research, is that in the entire net zero journey for any automotive industry, for two-wheeler, like our industry, 97% of our carbon footprint is sitting into scope 3 category 11, which is not there in your report right now. Start working on it. Maybe next report will have much more clarity and granular research around it. When rubber hit the road, you switch on the engine, the carbon start emitting for the ICE vehicles. And this will remain for even EV vehicles. There is not much of a differentiation because grid is still grey. We are still sourcing power from coal. It will take another 15 years to make the grid green, and also then EV also will have a meaningful impact in a current value creation. So when I'm talking to my CFO, I said, look, 2 crore tons of CO2 today is in our baseline category 11 in scope 3. And if we don't start working around it, 5 years down the line, it will be applicable to our industry for scope 1 and 2. 15 years down the line, it will be applicable for scope 3 also. So current taxation is around 1 and 2, but 3 will also come in play. So 15 years down the line, if we don't reduce this 2 crore tons of CO2, imagine that time the carbon price or tax would be $70. And that's a reality. 15 years back, in Europe, it has started with €1. Today, the conversion price is 70, and that will happen in India also. So imagine 2 crore tons multiplied by $70. Every year, this is a cost which company need to bear. My entire bottom line will be swiped off. Whatever my green which number shows as a profit and growth, 15 years down the line, we will no more be profitable. And that's what is all about sustainability. That how you can get an early pulse, start working on it, look into what are the best ways and means to address it. You know what is the truth right now? None of the corporate automobile industry today across the world, they actually know what is their category, scope 3 category 11. Because there is no means to measure it. Tata report if you pick up, Mahindra's report you pick up, both of them are four-wheeler industries. Both of them have a different ways to calculate scope 3 category 11. Someone is taking 8,000 kilometer vehicle driving every year, someone is taking 10,000 kilometer every year, but they all are estimating and guesstimating. Imagine tomorrow this law come in play, we don't even have a measure by which we can say each vehicle ply for these many kilometers. How many of you have a two-wheeler bike? Can you raise hands? Those who are 5-year-old bike, raise your hand. Good. How many kilometers you have ridden? 20,000. 5 years, 20,000 kilometer? What about you, sir? Back? 40,000. 5 year and more to 40,000. My bike is 14-year-old and I have ridden only 21,000 kilometer. But as a OEM, what I am taking calculation, 12,000 kilometer, I am assuming everyone is riding, multiply for next 15 years, and that's how I am taking that cost accounting into my account for the carbon. So imagine when I don't have a visibility, how much more inflated carbon I am putting on my shoulder today, just to sake of showing the fancy report that, oh, I have calculated scope 3, and if I am not able to course correct it, 15 years down the line, I can't go back in 15 years and say, hey, I made a mistake, this is a scientific way to calculate it. Only EV vehicles have right now BMS system where you can see how many kilometers bike is getting driven because it's a connected feature. But none of the ICE vehicle, be it a two-wheeler, three-wheeler, four-wheeler right now have a feature to actually estimate the accurate kilometer ridden by or driven by every individual. So first policy mandate should come in the direction, what is meaningful, we should attack it. If my industry is telling 97% carbon footprint is sitting in scope 3 category 11, forget about all other categories. Jump into category 11 and solve the problem which is need of an hour. And Europe has already solved it. There is a startup company called Sigvox. They have established antennas across Europe. You can get a subscription, put a chip in a bike, and you can get to know that how many kilometer vehicle is getting driven on 1st April and 31st March. So that you have a clear accounting and accountability around that because they know the $70 they need to pay the price for the carbon. So let's understand things which are important and material, we are not focusing on it.
That's a very interesting point. The scope 3 is where the biggest uncertainty itself is, and more data needs to be there to measure this. I think this has been a fantastic discussion. And Mr. Rao and Arunima, any closing thoughts from you?
The carbon trading and carbon credits is going to play a major role in our journey towards sustainability. So once these guidelines are clear and everybody realizes the benefits of these things, then there will be more active participation moving towards sustainable actions. Thank you.
Yeah. Arunima, anything from you?
Yeah, so I would like to say that even though we talk a lot about EVs and recycling and all, our aim is not to create clean congestion. So let's also focus on shared mobility and focus more on public transportations.
Okay, thank you. So shared mobility is another point. Great. Thank you, everybody. It's very difficult to summarize this fantastic discussion, but some points did stuck with me. First of all, action is already happening on many fronts. Going by the point that Thakur mentioned that 97% of emissions are scope 3, even if we are not estimated it exactly, we know a large chunk of it is scope 3. We do know that. We know the exact number, we don't know. But making supply chain evolve is very challenging. We also understand it is a very challenging thing, but I think the big positive message I do take from the discussion today is that there are ways to do it. It could be through business models, incentive structures, and OEMs are powerful enough to leverage their power to make the supply chains also evolve. So that's a great message. Recycling came up many times in the debate. And I think the very motivating part for me was that now sustainability is entering the strategic level decision making. So if you're having discussions with your CFO at such high level, so it means that it is becoming more and more important. And there are many reasons for that. CBAM is like one of the reasons, but there are many other reasons for that, why this is becoming more and more strategic. And rethinking shared mobility, public transport, as Arunima mentioned, that is also an important lever for decarbonization, not just for the downstream, as it is obvious, but also for the upstream part of the discourse. So many interesting learnings, and this has been fantastic panel. I've been privileged to interact with all of you. We'll continue to do that. Ankit, believe he has not managed to get out of the board meeting, which of course is a lot more important meeting that is happening there, but we do miss, he has really been involved in the process for some time. So we thank him also for his generous time and effort. And thank you again. We'll close this panel discussion. Over to you, Rohini.
Thank you, dear panelists, for that extremely engaging discussion which delved deep into the efforts by OEMs in terms of vehicle design, sourcing clean energy, carbon pricing, R&D, offset planning, and scrap recycling. We hope that the insights from today can lead to flourishing future discussions on the decarbonization of automobile manufacturing. As we approach the culmination of today's event, I kindly invite Dr. Chaturvedi to deliver the concluding remarks.
Great. As I said, this has been a very interesting discussion, a lot of learnings for us. I do want to thank many people who have been involved in this process. First of all, the lead author of all this analysis, Chetna, my colleague, is there, and my colleague Pallavi and Chetna, who has really led a lot of this analysis. So that's the first thing I do want to mention. Our outreach team, who has set up all of this, setup and system for us to engage with a lot of you. So I thank the outreach team and the IT team. Ajit is there. So thank you all for all these fantastic arrangements today. I do want to thank the panelists. The panelists have been very kind for their time and for sharing their thoughts with all of us. And you could see a fantastic set of thoughts. I know many people are watching this online also in the live stream mode. So all of us have really benefited from the wealth of knowledge that you have shared with all of us. And finally, I do want to thank all the participants who have come, who have braved this weather. It was a very uncertain day today, so thank you for so many people who have ended up turning for the discussion today. And I think we'll continue the discussion. This is not the end. As I said, this is just the interim step. Our engagement with the corporate sector, many different kinds of companies, be it auto companies or other kinds of companies, is extremely important for the public policy discourse. So we are a research organization, but unless we engage with both the policymakers as well as people who are in the corporate sector and the private sector, it is impossible for us to crack this puzzle, which is a very difficult puzzle. All of us know that. So thank you for engaging with us. We'll continue this engagement in the auto sector as well as the larger policy discourse. We'll close the discussion for today. I invite you to join us for lunch outside and keep engaging and keep having those interesting conversations with us. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Thank you.